I'm coming back down with my knees just so that you can see my arm. This one is the shoulder cars, and it's a little more complex, so I'll try to talk you through it, and then I'll repeat it a couple times. Ultimately, your shoulder is a ball and socket joint. Rotation is its fundamental movement. So meaning that even though it's just maybe moving up in front of you in this single plane, there's also rotation happening at the joint because of that nature of it being a ball and socket joint. So we create rotation kind of in two different planes or two different axes. I'm going to rotate my arm bone in the joint, or this is actually called circumduction. I like to call it, I'm circumnavigating my arm circle, but I'm also gonna rotate my shoulder joint. P.S. If you have a sticky shoulder, and the idea of coming into these positions just does not seem very welcoming, exploring rotation in whatever position is comfortable is a great place to start. So just rotating that humerus in the shoulder joint is a great kind of starting place to just get that joint moving through a bit more range of motion, keeping in mind that rotation is basically the fundamental function of the shoulder joint. So even with my arm down by the side, I can still explore rotation. And I could explore that at different positions, different angles. I would just keep it pain-free. And you can still integrate that idea of creating resistance to that movement so that you're adding an element of control and that little bit of kind of isometric work. You can still irradiate. So rotation on its own, internal and external rotation, a great way to just inject a little bit of extra movement. Most of life brings us into internally rotated, forward flexed and adducted positions. So just creating external rotation and exploring both ranges still is a great way to give your shoulder just a bit of variability in its position. I'm going to get into the whole cars now. So again, I'm going to radiate, rooting my, in this case, my knees into the ground, or if I was standing, pressing my feet into the ground, feeling my quads and my glutes and my whole lower body engaged, starting to engage my core. I'm even going to adopt a bit of a fist. I always keep my hand open, but I could take a fist here. I don't always keep my hand open, but I like to think about lengthening this arm. So I'm going to engage pecs and shoulders, even this opposite hand and fist. If you're uncertain about what's happening in your rib cage, I will also often do this by holding my rib cage to feel if I'm rotating through my trunk. So the movement, I'm going to start by rotating my palm forward. I'm going to keep that palm rotated forward as I start to sweep in front of me, but also across my midline to just find every little angle that joint can produce. I'm going to keep reaching the arm long, keeping the elbow extended as I take that arm into overhead or whatever is your close to overhead. And naturally, I feel this need to start to unscrew and rotate my palm back behind me. So in a sense, your palm is going to face the direction your arm is traveling. That's kind of the best sort of guide. Although I'm going to, as I start to come down, I start to be able to add a little bit more internal rotation. So I'm going to end with my palm facing backwards. I'm going to turn and repeat in reverse. So I've ended with my palm facing backwards. I'm going to internally rotate a little bit more, and then I'm going to sweep back behind me, keeping my head, rib cage. Naturally, I feel that need to unwind around here. I'm going to rotate, keep rotating, keep unscrewing as I move that arm towards that overhead position. Notice I'm still unscrewing that palm, and it's now facing the ceiling. So I guess that rule of your palm facing the direction of your movement only works when you're moving in this direction. So my palm is now facing forward, and it's going to move up in front across my midline, my ears, reaching that elbow long, rotating, rotating, rotating in both of those fashions. So I'm circumnavigating my shoulder joint as I'm also rotating, or you can think of it as pivoting. I maximize that internal rotation ending here. Keeping my head, shoulders, trunk, everything nice and locked down. I'm gonna sweep, elbow stays long, shoulder stays away from the ears. Keep rotating, keep unscrewing, and all the way back through. So shoulders tend to be very sticky. There's a lot of compensations to look for here. The rib cage is a major one. So often we're quite sticky when we reach behind us, so we start to get into this kind of stuff where we're twisting through our torso. We often are sticky when we go overhead, so we often will tilt or lean or shrug our shoulder up. So I want to think about reaching my elbow high, lengthening that arm, but not dragging the shoulder with it. The other compensation is I'll bend my elbow, because if my brain is telling my hand to move overhead, but my shoulder can't get here, I can get my hand over my head if I bend my elbow and my shoulder, but that's what the direction or the position that my shoulder is creating in my upper arm bone, right? But if I bend my elbow, I kind of trick my brain into thinking, oh yeah, the hand's overhead. So watch for the bendy elbow to give you that illusion of coming into that overhead, and just meet your body where it's at. Shoulders are chronically a joint that gets quite sticky in a lot of ranges of motion. You want to keep it pain-free. You're just trying to explore what's available to your joint today. All right, obviously I would do that on both sides, and usually I do 2 to 3 repetitions in each direction. I go really slow though, so that takes me a long time. The full CARS routine takes me about 20 minutes, whereas others, it can take them about 10 to 15 if they, because they move a little bit quicker than they do. So I usually do 2 repetitions in each direction as my basic routine, and then certain joints I'll do more often throughout the day. All right, okay.